Hi, everybody. It's me, Connor. Welcome to the HooperCast. We're going to get started today in just a minute. I want to apologize if you can hear my son screaming in the background of this episode. We were streaming. I couldn't stop the show, and he wanted to give me his milk bottle back, and he was desperately trying to get my attention by screaming and banging on his door. Or he saw a malevolent entity in his room. I hope it was just the milk, because that's all he said when I got up there. Anyways, don't worry about that right now. Right now, I want to tell you about Letterboxd, because I didn't talk about it during the show, so I really should talk about it here so you know all about Letterboxd. This episode of the HooperCast is brought to you by Letterboxd. Right now, listeners of our show have the chance to win a free 1-year pro account upgrade on Letterboxd. For those of you who don't know, Letterboxd is a social network for film lovers that allows you to track, rate, and review the films you watch, and you can follow other members to get recommendations. You can publish lists of films like your top 10 for the year, and a lot more. For instance, we at the HooperCast have 2 or 3 lists on Letterboxd. You can find us, by the way, HooperCast on Letterboxd. You can see a list of films that I am from 2011 on that I never got to see, that I want to see, and that I will see and talk about on this show. You can see my list of films that I have seen but want to review and rewatch and reevaluate because I want to give them a fresh perspective. And you can actually look at the HooperCast show docket, so you can look at all the films that are on our Google Doc that we're going to speak about on the show. And then finally, you can see the films and the star ratings that we have spoken about and reviewed on the show, just in case you want to catch a quick, like, oh, what did they say about these? Did they like this film or not? What's the star rating? And then if you want to listen to the review, there's a link to the review in those reviews on Letterboxd. It's all there, certainly. Letterboxd is free to use. That's the next thing. No cost to you. There is no subscription fee. However, a pro account is going to provide you with additional features such as a customized summary of your past year's viewing and a lot of other cool shit. If you already have a pro account, then you get a year extension free. So if you think, oh, I've already got it, boo-boo, you know what? Neither of us are going to stick our heads in doo-doo right now, because you know what? You get that next year free. It's on us. It's on the house. It's on the Hooper house, man. If you want to enter, all you have to do is listen to our show right now, and we will read the code word at random. There's a code word. It's August. There's an August code word, and it is somewhere in this episode right now, son. So if you go figure out where we might have hidden that code word, then happy trails. Good luck finding it. If you do find it and you do hear it, you can email us at hoopercast@gmail.com and put the code word in the subject line and include in the body of the email your username on Letterboxd. The winner will be selected during the last show of each month. You can also follow our show on Letterboxd. Just search HooperCast. That's letterboxd.com, 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 baby. Woo! Here's the HooperCast number 175, I think. Thanks.
I love the build up to that.
I know. I was feeling it tonight. I was really feeling it.
Yeah.
Even though the we're having some audio video sync issues, it ain't gonna stop me from being super excited about this show.
This is gonna be a good show, man.
Yeah, man. I'm feeling it.
Woo! Me too. I'm on board.
Yeah, dude. If I scream too loud, my daughter will come downstairs and investigate. She does stuff like that. She's like the man of the house. Like, I heard she'll come downstairs like during this show, and I'll be like, what's wrong? She'll be like, I heard something. I'm like, you should be cowering in your bedroom like I would be doing. Speaking of nothing we're talking about right now, here are a bunch of places on social media that you can find our show. Of course, the most important one is the YouTube channel. If you go to it and subscribe to it. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers so we can do fun stuff with our lives and our content.
Yeah.
But our lives as well. Yeah. And of course on Twitter, it's never a bad thing to get another Twitter follower. So someone can
not at all.
send you a message and go, hey, I disagree. And you go, hey, I'm not even looking at this. but thank you.
Right.
But actually, the one I'd recommend of all those is the Letterboxd page, because you can watch, you can look at the lists that we've made. We've made a few lists on there. One of them being the actual HooperCast show docket. So if you want to know what we're going to be talking about coming up, you can go look at that list and be like, oh, they're talking about my favorite movie from last month. So I'm going to make sure to tune in because I know what they're talking about.
Yep.
And yeah, and if there's nothing that you recognize on the list, still listen, because maybe we have some good things to say about it, and maybe you'll be like, oh, you know what, I should watch that.
Yeah, I should check that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some culture in my life.
Right.
Yeah. Where's the other slide? Whoopsie daisy.
Who better to bring you culture than us?
Of course, there's all the podcast platforms too. If you want to listen to this show, if you're busy right now, you tuned in the stream, but you're like, hey, I have to go to the potty, then catch us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify. Important stuff there. Very important stuff. Tonight we have a topic to discuss. Dustin had this great idea to sort of cap off the James Gunn news with some James Gunn speculation.
Yeah.
And so that news, of course, being I've got this article from The Verge up here that despite the backlash, Disney confirms it will not rehire James Gunn. Of course, we've been talking about it for a few weeks here on the show, but of course, over the tweets that surfaced from James Gunn from long ago, so we were hopeful. I was hopeful that, and there was news of back channel negotiations for James Gunn first it was to get his contract sorted out and paid out correctly since he didn't breach his contract, but then it was him and Alan Horn, the head of Walt Disney Pictures, were presumably meeting in secret to sort of talk about him coming back. Yeah. So whether it was actually that, or whether it was rose-colored glasses framed, in the for future speculation, or whether it just went sour, or it was never going to happen. Probably was never going to happen.
Right.
Alan Horn said, I made a decision, I'm sticking to it, and you are still not coming back.
Yeah.
Which is sad. But we've talked about how sad and unfair it is enough on the show. So we're going to move on from James Gunn and the sad news surrounding his involvement or non-involvement in the Guardians films.
Yeah.
But Dustin, you had a good idea, which is we should talk about who we think will replace him, should replace him. Likely, we always do this with movies. We used to do this when we talked about the Oscars when they didn't suck so hard.
Right.
We used to say, who do we think is going to win Best Picture, and who do we think should win Best Picture? Because we always knew should and will are always different things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have a list. I really just have one pick, and I'm willing to talk about others should the occasion arise.
I have one pick, a choice that I think would be super strong. I don't know that there's much of a chance for it, but I want to talk about, who I would pick. Okay. And then on top of that, I do have a couple of other names that I think are, maybe not more likely, but also likely, also possible. And yeah. So I think we could probably start with, just, any order, just kind of throw a name out there and see what happens.
Cool. Hold on just a minute.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dustin.
That's all good.
Not only is my mic completely muted during what I was just doing, you're just sitting there on the screen waiting for me to finish doing it.
No, it's all good.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and I missed the last thing what you said because I was trying not to lose my cool. So
I got you.
What were you saying?
No, I was saying we could probably do this in any order. Just throw a name out there and then just talk about it. Okay. So why don't we start with what our number one pick would be? And again, this isn't necessarily who we think is most likely to get the job, but just who we would kind of like to see get the job.
Sexy.
Yeah. So do you want to throw it out first, or do you want me to go first?
I'd like you to go first, and then
Okay.
I will come back with my my substantiating thoughts or otherwise.
Gotcha. So my choice, if somebody just dropped this on my lap and said, "Okay, Dustin, you got to take over the Guardians file. Like you got to pick a director. Go ahead." My choice would be Phil Lord and Christopher Miller.
Okay.
This is not likely, and I'll tell you why. Disney being the parent company of both Star Wars and Marvel, Disney is not likely to hire these guys because they just had such a weird, poor, awful, I don't know what it was, time with them on Solo. So bad that they ended up recasting them. Now, I do think that probably Kevin Feige would be more likely to play ball with them than Kathleen Kennedy was.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, and honestly, I could see. Well, for those of you who don't know, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, they are the guys behind Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I think at least the first one. They also did the Lego Movie, and they
Got
also
their picture up here.
Yeah,
Well, not that people
yeah.
would know what they look like necessarily, but
Sure. And they also did 21 and 22 Jump Street. So they are, comedy experts. I love their sensibility. It's two things. One, 21 and 22 Jump Street is, a little more adult oriented. And then you have Lego Movie and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which prove that they can do like childish humor too, which proves to me that they can thread that needle that Marvel needs to appeal to both the adult and the child, because at the end of the day, this is still a comic book franchise, and you got to be kid friendly. But you can kind of slip in some stuff that makes the adults happy too. So I think Phil Lord and Christopher Miller are good choices. Not just for their comedic sensibilities, but they've also already worked with Chris Pratt. So I could see Chris Pratt going to ball for them. He's the lead character on the Lego Movie. And so I could see him kind of saying like, hey, these guys, like I'll vouch for them. Like, if anybody can do this, it's these guys. And I think that they're still, relatively small enough that they would be looking for a franchise to jump on board now that, Solo didn't work out. And they would be willing to play ball with Marvel and kind of, work for them if they can work for them. So I think it would be a great kind of collaboration for Marvel. And yeah, I just think these guys are super funny and they need something that's funny and also kind of critically acclaimed. And all of the movies I just listed, Lego, Cloudy, 21 and 22 Jump Street, all received at least some level of critical acclaim. So yeah, I think they're a solid choice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And this is your pick. It's like, this is if it was up to you and Kevin Feige.
Yeah. I have a close second, but I think if I sat down with Kevin Feige, they would be the first name that I bring up. I would just say, look, let's talk to them. Let's see if they have a take on this. Let's let them read what James Gunn did. Let's let them kind of put their own stamp on it, but at the same time, I think it's a reliable stamp. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So who do you have for me, Hooper?
Okay. Well, hold on. I'm curious. Well, who you said you had a close second?
I do have a close second.
Who would your close second be?
My close second would be Jason Reitman, who, for those of you who don't know, Jason Reitman did Juno, Up in the Air, Thank You for Smoking, more recently, like Young Adult. So this is another comedy guy, but he kind of comes from it with maybe a less than mainstream vibe. He's a little more of an outsider to Hollywood. I mean, he's not because he's a Reitman, but at the same time, he is because he kind of just always has done his own thing. He's never really been attached to a franchise or a tentpole film at all. But I think that A, he has the comedy chops. B, he has good dramatic a good dramatic eye. If you watch something like Up in the Air, you'll see that. And I think that he's just a good director. Juno was such a good, it was like kind of a smash hit when it came out, and that it felt like an indie, but it kind of really wasn't. And I think that, looking at what they did with James Gunn, pulling him from this, not very well-known place, of like, I'm a rogue, whatever, I do my own thing. I think Jason Reitman kind of could be that same thing for them. I think he's a little more dramatic and maybe not as silly as James Gunn or Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, but I think that maybe post Infinity War, we might be willing to accept, something a little more dramatic, as long as the comedy is still there. And I think Jason Reitman can do both, as seen in like Thank You for Smoking, which is both like irreverent and like deadpan comedy mixed with good drama. And like I said, he's not as silly, but that's not to say he can't do silly.
Sorry about that, Dustin. I just didn't unmute my mic. I was talking to you. Sorry, it sounded like you were winding back up, so I was giving it a second. And then that's interesting. I'd be interested to see what Jason Reitman would do, because I do like his films, and I think he has a good sensibility, mix between comedy and actual drama, like you were saying. He's very character centric. So that's definitely a strength of his. I don't know. But because I don't know, it makes me feel like, that'd be a good choice, because it'd be weird. I guess it would just be like, to me, like, I don't know, what specifically about what you do you think you can bring to the table here? But you could say that about any of these directors, really.
It's true. And at the end of the day, the question is, well, do you want somebody who's going to copy James Gunn's aesthetic, someone who's going to, try to essentially picture match him? Right. Or do you want somebody who can do their own thing while complementing? So when I was looking back over or thinking over like various directors, the reason Jason Reitman came to mind, I thought about what the Russos did with Guardians. So obviously, I think it's been well reported that the Guardians dialogue in Infinity War was still polished by James Gunn.
I believe it was headed to written.
Maybe it was. At the very least, it was polished, and I think that's evident. But at the same time, it was directed in a very different way. The style, the aesthetic, the visual flair that the Russos bring is very different than the visual flair that James Gunn brings. And so for that reason, I started saying, okay, well, do we want somebody who's going to copy, or do we want somebody who's going to do their own thing? Because at the end of the day, it's not a James Gunn film. And I think Kevin Feige would be hard pressed to find a director to say, okay, I'll just like essentially put my name on this, but direct it as if I'm James Gunn. I think that's going to be a hard thing to sell to any filmmaker, especially an established or, working filmmaker. You give it to somebody who's a little more disgraced or a little more like on the outsides, they might be willing to do it. But
sure.
But if you give it to like a name, like somebody that we're going to be thinking of, I think it's going to be harder to say you have to match the tone and style, because at the end of the day, a movie is not a TV show. And as interconnected as the MCU is, it's not like, okay, so-and-so goes to direct an episode of The Office. Of course, you've got to match the tone, the style, the sensibility of The Office. You can't stray from it too much. And to an extent, that may be true here too. But I think when it comes to movies, they're a very different beast. And I think you're going to have a hard time finding somebody to just say, look, I'll just roll over and let everybody else tell me how James would do it, and I'll just put my name on it. So that was my thought process anyway.
These are all interesting points, Dustin. And they're very, they make perfect sense for 99% of directors out there.
Yes.
Which is why my pick is so interesting.
Okay, so give me your pick.
My pick, maybe it's not so interesting or surprising or even good. My pick, this is who I would pick and who I think is a likely pick, at least in terms of who Disney would approve of.
Sure.
It just comes down to what they would want to do. I say they.
Okay.
My pick is Anthony and Joe Russo.
Okay, sure.
And I thought about this because everything you're saying makes sense. You really have to think about it in terms of what's the goal? Is the goal to establish and breathe new life into a brand, or is it to keep it consistent?
Yeah.
And I think for most films and most franchises out there, the goal would have been new life into the brand, which is what they're all about.
Yeah.
I believe this film is an exception to that directive. I think that especially the way that James, it wasn't just, hey, I'm not going to be involved. Like there's no skeleton for the story yet, nothing. There's no trilogy. There's nothing. Then it would have just been a complete, like, all right, let's start from square one. But because the fact that the Guardians films are meant to be a trilogy, a three-act, a three-part story, it's been written and directed and brought to life and visualized, assembled everything by the one director. And then he was involved in casting everybody. He is a large reason, obviously, why that film and those characters work. And so the fact that he has at least written the third part to his trilogy, I think that the reason that the Anthony and Joe work is obviously because if from a business standpoint, they're a safe choice. They know how to work with Marvel. Obviously, they're deep in with Marvel and Disney. Kevin Feige trusts them, so there's no conversation to be had with them about like, okay, like here's your boundaries. They know the score. I think that the actors would not that the actors would turn in a terrible performance for a brand new director, but I think there's just something in the air about. This just should have been James. It should have been James. Should have been James. And I think that everyone's gonna be thinking that to a certain extent. I think the audience expects James Gunn's aesthetic to an extent. So I think if you're gonna have someone not copycat it, but essentially just deliver what the audience is expecting and what the vision that's already been laid out, I think you go with the Russo brothers because they're the only other directors in this whole machine who have actually directed the Guardians.
Sure.
And if there had been stark criticism about how those characters acted, appeared, were portrayed on film in Infinity War, it would be like, well, we're obviously not going to pick the Russo brothers. But like, I think the fact that at least there were no complaints about it, and that everyone, like you said, and essentially, like you said, they've directed James Gunn's material already.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what this job becomes, is shooting and directing the actors with James Gunn's dialogue just for a whole feature length. So in a way, I think they're uniquely qualified to step in. And I'm going to go ahead and say finish the film for him. It's not like he's shot part of it and they got to finish. Like, it's not like the Joss Whedon, Zack Snyder thing, but it is, this film has begun already with a vision. They're sticking with that vision, and that's the vision everyone wants. And I do think that they would show it the proper respect, having, knowing James and sort of already just proving to everyone involved, like there's not going to be any like opening weekend. There's not going to be any trepidation, I don't think, for anybody watching this movie or gearing up to watch this movie on opening weekend to go, oh, it's probably going to suck though, because it's not the same guy, whether you know about the news or you don't, I think that they're a safe choice. I think everyone would feel good about it. In my opinion, especially, like I said, the fans are the most important thing. They have received their handling of the characters well.
No, I agree. I agree with all points. I think that, the question remains, like we said, do we want something that is fresh and new, or do we want something that's consistent with what came before? Right. And that really is the $1 million question. I don't know, if I were in Kevin Feige's shoes, I don't know which way I would go, because one of the things that worked with the Guardians, or maybe the biggest thing that worked with the Guardians, is James Gunn's vision. However, the reason that flourished as well as it did, at least one of the reasons, is because they gave an artist freedom. And I guess it could be argued that by limiting and saying now you have to work within the confines that James Gunn established to another director, you are essentially killing the thing that made the franchise so great to begin with. But having said that, the Russos would be great picks because A, they're safe. B, they know, like you said, everything that goes into directing those people, and you're right. They would just be safe, good picks. And so I guess if the question is, we want somebody who can match, then there's no question the Russos have to be the pick. For me, if they want somebody who wants to do something fresh and new, then in my opinion, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller are going to give you the closest thing to James Gunn, but still being true to who they are as filmmakers. Because obviously, people bring up Taika Waititi all the time, but but I don't feel like Taika Waititi's humor is really that interchangeable. I feel like Phil Lord and Christopher Miller is more interchangeable with James Gunn, but at the same time is fresh and unique to himself. And we don't want the Guardians to be Thor Ragnarok.
No, Thor Ragnarok, while, because I think I agree, Taika Waititi is the obvious choice.
Yeah.
2, he's busy. They'd have to delay the movie a lot. I don't think they want to do that. No. And 3, Ragnarok is kind of silly.
It is.
And I would expect the treatment of the Guardians characters to be a bit more dramatic than that. Like they make jokes, they do kind of crazy things, but there's a very serious and emotional, foundation to these characters. Yeah. And then the whole point of Taika Waititi directing Thor was to not take him so seriously.
Exactly.
So I think tonally it's actually a bad idea.
I would agree. And so if we're looking within the MCU, then the obvious choice are the Russos. Now, here's another sort of weird choice, because there were 2 other names that I came up with, and they're both really strange. So stick with me. But they both have Marvel connections. The first is Edgar Wright. Would he ever jump in bed with Marvel again? Doubtful. But I think that he could give us something pretty darn close to what James would have given us, but it would be uniquely Edgar Wright as well. But I think that as a filmmaker, I think he would have the respect to say, all right, let me defer to James's vision here. But it's going to have my stamp of, the visual elements, those quick cuts and close-ups and zooms and whatever else, I'm sure would be all over it. But that doesn't feel out of place in a Guardians movie to me. So that name came to my mind. And the other name that came to my mind, also with Marvel connection, is Joss Whedon himself. Joss Whedon's, snarky sense of humor borders on pessimistic sometimes, especially recently. But I do think that if he digs back down into the well of optimism that he once had, that he could deliver something okay. But again, that would make him there was a time back in the first phase where he was sort of the doctor of a lot of things.
Yeah, he doctored everything. He doctored, I think, beginning with Iron Man 2.
Captain America, Thor. Like, I think he doctored pretty much everything leading up to his film. Yep. And I could see him, as somebody who knows, hey, when you work with a studio, you got to bend to the studio. Now, I think he forgot that and kind of poo-pooed all over Marvel for a minute. So would they ever invite him back? I don't know. Clearly, as you see in the photos here, he's going to their premieres still.
Well, he's part of the round table on the Blu-ray.
Yeah,
He's very, and he doesn't, at least he doesn't sound. I mean, it could have just been, hey, Joss, will you come do, come do the class photo. Oh, come do the round table and come to the premiere. And he could just be like,
okay,
put on a good face. But at the same time, he had a very good chance he had a very good chance when Warner Brothers had him finish Justice League. He could have very publicly been like, "Yeah, I've always loved DC better," or F Marvel.
Yeah.
I hate them, and I'm never going to be involved with them again.
Right.
So either he's just playing it really smart at realizing that he played it sort of dumb on the way out.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's been humbled by that brief scandal he had to go through.
Yeah.
I that's a really interesting pick, Dustin, because I didn't think of him at all, but I think they would absolutely have him. I mean, I think they've certainly considering him.
I would say so, and I think that Joss, again, would have to dig back into his well of optimism, and he'd have to allow himself to be silly again, which he used to be, and you don't have to look further than Firefly to get the idea of a group of people on a ship with all unique voices that could do something silly. If you were to mix Firefly with the sensibilities of Dr. Horrible's Sing Along Movie Blog or whatever that was called, you basically have Guardians of the Galaxy.
This movie could save Joss Whedon.
It could.
In the way, and I say that very seriously, in the way that James Gunn himself had basically said, like, making these films has made me a better person, and how a lot of the cast agrees with that. It's a weird way, in that way of life imitating art. Like, this film in a way, not like Joss's career needs, redemption or anything, because he's doing fine in terms of that. But I think that if, like you said, if he can dig back into a well of optimism and actually like come out the other side and finish this trilogy the right way and do a great job with it, I think not only does he have the correct sensibility to do it justice for James Gunn, but I think for him personally, I don't know Joss Whedon, but I feel like it would do a lot for him, like for his soul. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like to actually come out of this and bring these characters to catharsis like that.
Right. And it reestablishes him as he really was Marvel's first like ace in the hole.
Yeah.
He was Marvel's first, godfather, if you will. I mean, obviously Kevin Feige, but like, on the filmmaking side of things.
He was the first like perfect choice.
Yeah, and the Russos have taken over. Like they've taken his mantle and they said, "Look, we're gonna kind of doctor some stuff, and we're gonna work on things, and we're gonna do the Avengers, and we're gonna," and that's all great because at the end of the day, remember they both come from like television backgrounds. They're all whatever, goofy, irreverent kind of guys. But at the same time,
they also know this. They also know how to work on a relentless schedule and with a large cast and sort of an overarching vision and working and fitting pieces into a vision, not just this is some standalone thing we're doing. They care about continuity.
Yeah. So I would say. This is just me speaking. If the idea is to breathe fresh life into this, I would say give it to Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. Or if you want to, really kind of think outside the box here, I would go with Jason Reitman. If, on the other hand, you want to play it safe and do something James Gunn-ish, then I'd say you give it to the Russos or Joss Whedon. And that's it. Those are your four picks. Like, and I'll be honest with you, right? Like Jason Reitman, I don't have any strong feelings about that pick. Sure. It was really like, hey, you know what? I haven't seen him really do a lot lately, and I think this could be his first good kind of tentpole thing. But it's not. It doesn't like excite me. But these other three picks do, and I think that
I could take or leave the Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Like I liked the Lego Movie and I liked their sensibility on one or two things, but I think you're right. I think Disney would never work with them again, or it's unlikely that they would work with them again.
Right. I think it would only happen if Chris Pratt like stuck up for him, right?
But I don't see why he would more than the Russos or even Joss,
Right, exactly. So because and truth be told, what Chris Pratt did for them on Lego Movie, he probably didn't have a whole lot of time and energy and whatever put into that film. So it's probably not the strongest relationship there. But all that to say, I think probably the best bet, as we've talked about all of this, maybe the best bet is Joss Whedon, strangely, for me. That would probably get me the most excited because A, he knows what he's doing within the Marvel universe. B, it would get some goodwill back that he desperately needs from me and from the fans, and it frees up the Russos to do more Avengers or something, because I don't want Joss Whedon to go back to that, because I think the Russos are a way better fit for that.
I think so too, and I think also here's what I think about Joss Whedon too. I think that it would be it would make sense. I think for him, with what's going on with DC right now and Warner Brothers, and the fact that they're essentially outright saying we have no plans for, like, we're going to drop our cinematic universe. Like we suck. We couldn't do it. And we're just going to do a bunch of standalones, which again, we could argue might be more appealing for quote unquote more higher tier directors. Sure. I think as we've seen with the MCU though, there is no, you can't judge a director's talent based on their high profile, because so many of these directors did such a great job with these films, and people I had never heard of James Gunn before Guardians. Right. And I hadn't even thought about what Jon Favreau had directed before I saw Iron Man. So anyways, I think with what's going on with the DC universe now, I think Joss, let's say they've talked to him. Let's say that Kevin sat down with him and been like, are you interested? Like, would you like to come back? I think Joss is thinking, okay, so I'm in with Warner Brothers. But is there a future at Warner Brothers for the kind of movies I want to do?
He walked away.
He did?
He did. He was attached to Batgirl, and he walked away. He said the script wasn't right. Yeah, I couldn't crack the script.
Yeah. So with that going on, he's thinking, okay, if I want to do any of these kinds of movies, it's going to be with Marvel. So I don't know if anything with his reputation I don't know what's going on in the business end of it, but I know for him, he's thinking, okay, this is like a one movie commitment too. I don't have to do anything. Like if I do this film, there's no like, okay, will you be attached for an Avengers sequel? Can you consult? Can you spend years? Because I think after a while, the stress just got to him. For this, it's like, I know exactly how I would do it.
One and done.
And it's one and done. And I think he's very likely. Jesus, Dustin, that's a good pick,
Yeah.
I see now. I don't know what I prefer. Do I prefer the Russos or Whedon? I think in terms of just logistics, it'd obviously be easier to get Whedon, because then the Russos can move on and focus on future films. I mean, finishing Avengers 4. I mean, I don't even know when Guardians would have shot or filmed, but if they're going to direct, wasn't Guardians supposed to have been shooting by now?
It's soon anyway. Yeah.
Let's pretend it was going to start shooting in March.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 2 months not for them to not spend in post-production on the final movie in phase was it 3 we're in?
3, yeah.
I think they'd be like, you're out of your fucking mind. Like,
right,
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So in the way, it makes total sense for Joss Whedon to do it.
Yeah, totally.
Wow. All right, Dustin. That's compelling. Absolutely. I feel tingly.
Right.
I feel great. I feel so great that I think we're going to end the stream. All right. So if y'all are watching on Facebook Live, we appreciate that, but we're going to go now, and you can catch the rest of this episode. Where's the thing? Oh, it's gone. No, it's not. It's somewhere. I'll find it. You can go to our YouTube channel, as we were saying, and watch the rest of the show.
Yep.
Just go to YouTube, search HooperCast, and subscribe to the channel before you go. And get us to 1,000. That'd be great. That'd be swell. So please do that. Anyways, or listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Twitcher, whatever. I don't know. Twitcher's not a thing. Twitter's a thing. Twitch is a thing. Twitcher.
Yep. Twitcher.
Not a thing.
That should be a thing.
Yeah.
Create it.
Yeah. It's what happens to me when I don't have enough drink. All right, we're going to end the stream, everybody. We'll check on Friday for this episode fully to be out. And also for the what's the August Letterboxd? I'm going to do the pre-roll at the beginning of the show, but what is it? It's going to be, that's right, August. Okay, LilyPad. That's what it is. LilyPad. If you missed those instructions, go back to the front of the show, listen for those things. All right. See you, everybody.
Yay.
Let's keep it going. I've got some stuff to talk about. We got some movies to talk about. Yeah. I wanted to talk about Oculus.
Yeah.
Which was filmed in Mobile and Fairhope. This is also on Netflix. It's directed by Mike Flanagan. You may recognize the name from my review of Gerald's Game, and then us talking about what was it? Crap. What were we talking about? Before I Wake.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that too. So Oculus, this is from 2012 or 2013. There he is with Karen Gillan, the star, of course, from the aforementioned Guardians of the Galaxy franchise we were just talking about. And then Rory Cochran's in it, and a couple of other actors I don't recognize. Oh, there's someone named Katie Stackhoff, I think, who's very famous for Battlestar Galactica. I remember someone always telling me like, yeah, Katie Stackhoff's really hot. And then I guess so. She's attractive, but she's certainly scary in this film. So Oculus is about this mirror and basically just things that happen when the mirror is in your house. So these Karen Gillan and this other dude here, I don't know his name, play siblings. And what happened is when they were kids, their dad committed like a horrific crime in their home, and so they sort of know it to be attributed to this malevolent entity inside this mirror, or whatever, housed in the mirror or something it does. Okay. And so they're trying. So Karen Gillan is determined to prove this, and essentially, not like exonerate their dad or anything, but sort of like, bring some restore the family name in a way.
Sure.
So she convinces her brother, who is responsible for killing their dad, to stop him from all this as a child. He just got out of like a mental hospital. So he's like ready to move past it. He's convinced, nope, none of this stuff happened. I made it all, doesn't believe it. And so he's the cynic here, and she's the one who's trying to prove like, no, this happened. This film, is great. I gave this a 5-star.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I really loved Oculus.
Sweet.
The reason I love Oculus so much is, it's just so unbelievably suspenseful. And I do mean like true suspense. This is not a movie that is relying on jump scares. I mean, there's one or two like, but they're not like, I wouldn't even consider them jump scares. They're like, it's just well-built tension. I'm invested in the story. And it's one of those movies where, one of the things that the mirror does is it messes with your perception of reality. Yeah. This is the kind of stuff that I thought they might be doing when they introduced Scarlet Witch to the MCU. Yeah. When they were talking about how she can mess with like reality, I thought they were going to start doing this kind of stuff. I remember thinking, oh, the sky's the limit with distorting reality, because you could do any number of things. Like you could have like a 5 dreams deep sort of thing where you keep thinking you're not dreaming, but you're still dreaming. Right. Like, there's so much they could do. And then, they gave her like, mystical punchy powers. Right. This one is like, there's a whole lot of little things in the mirror influencing people in little ways so that they thought that the other person did something that they didn't do. And the other person, this reminded me of a lot of arguments I've had with my wife where like, why'd you turn the temperature to this? And I'm like, I didn't touch it. She's like, well, who did it? I don't know. The kids, I don't know, somebody. Like I it was kind of freaky like that. I hope it doesn't end the way it ends here, which is, a giant mess of blood. This is a 5-star movie. I highly recommend people see this. It's on Netflix. You can go see it right now. And it's not, there might be people watching who are like, I've heard people, and I sort of was one of these people, like, oh, I can't watch any horror, bad dreams. This film is not scary in that sort of sense. For some reason, the better constructed a horror movie is, the less I'm scared of it, like afterwards, which is a good feeling, because I don't want to be scared out of my pants to watch a film, because then all you've done is show me disturbing imagery, but you haven't presented me a good film. So I don't know if it's because I'm technically, like, I can appreciate it on a technical level, so I'm not as, mystified after the fact by the horror, or if it's just because these aren't supposed to give you nightmares. They're supposed to just keep you in the moment. And so I think in that sense, it did that. It kept me in the moment. Yeah. Like I said, it messes with reality a lot. So you are constantly, my eyes were glued to the screen. Like I was making sure, I was trying to figure out, like, okay, is this real? Is this actually happening? And it does some crazy things. Like, she has a whole camera set up on the thing. She has this thing down. She has timers that go off to remind her to hydrate, to do this, to call like her fiance to check in with him. So there are plenty of times in this film where they think they've made a phone call and they actually haven't, or they think they haven't made a phone call and they actually did. There's a time where they go back in the room and the cameras, they're pointed at the mirror, they're pointed right at each other, like lens to lens. Ooh, cool. And all the chairs are moved. They're like, how'd that happen? She says, I'm playing back the last 3 minutes, and it shows them having the conversation they just had, and it shows them in the frame moving, putting the cameras arranging the cameras like that. And she's like, I remember doing that. Do you? And he's like, what the heck? And that's the thing. So it has you doing stuff and you don't even remember doing it. You don't know if you're choosing to do it or it's crazy. So awesome. This film is great. I certainly recommend Oculus, Dustin, especially to you. Yeah, that's awesome. As we've been sort of on this horror kick lately. Yep. So I really do like Oculus, and I also respect it finally, because without getting into specific spoilers, the film does not end well. It's not, because I respect, and that's what the fifth star was, because it was great tension. But if they had an ending that kind of wrapped everything up in a neat little bow, I would have thought that's unrealistic, because this thing is this mirror is unbeatable. Right. And if they had been like, oh, I'll just do this thing and this thing and this thing that the anthropologist told us over Skype, like is in these things all the time. If they had just beat it with some other MacGuffin, I would have been like, oh, that sucks. That's dumb. That wouldn't have happened. With all the stuff that this thing can do for the whole movie, you're going to beat it with this. So, the film does not cheap out on its ending, and awesome. It's not like a film where, silence, look down the hall, girl, girl soaking wet, whatever. It's people, it's characters you trust suddenly not themselves, chasing other characters, what's her face, at some point it happens to her and she's chasing her children up the stairs through their house. That's terrifying. And watching Katie Sackhoff, who's a tall, athletic woman, chasing these two frightened kids through the house, that's terrifying. Mm-hmm. It's not even because she's like a demon or she has any weird powers. It's just like, boom, she's just, it's a scary concept. Yep. So I've talked about it enough. It's a great film. Go see it. I loved Oculus. Sweet. I would even watch it again, to be honest, just to pick it apart and be like, oh, where is everything? So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, great stuff. Loved it. Cool. Yeah, I can't give it enough praise. Sweet. Clearly. Yeah, man. Awesome. I'll have to check it out. Yeah. There's I will say this. Check that out. Why isn't it letting me get rid of this? That's cool. I just wanted to disconnect the slideshow so I could do something else. But it's because I locked it for some reason. Why did I do that? That's weird. See? Do you see what I'm talking about? I didn't do that, but I did that. There it is. That's weird. All the buttons are in weird places. This is strange. Can I just say, real quick, I didn't mean to do this, but just because we're on the topic of it, sure, I would watch this for sure. Instead of another Mike Flanagan horror film on Netflix, which is the film Hush. So this is more recent. This is from 2016, I think. Okay. It stars, I don't want to give away any names or any identities, but although it's the only cast member I recognize from this film was the guy from the Newsroom, John Gallagher Jr. I think his name is. Mm-hmm. He's the killer, and you know that because he takes off his mask very soon in the film, which is kind of cool. As you see in this image, so this film is about a writer who lives kind of out in the woods, and one night, and a masked killer appears at her door. Okay. And the catch here is that she is deaf. Okay. So that adds kind of an extra layer of suspense to the film. But so it sort of takes away. I don't know if it was effective or not for him to unmask himself so soon in the film. He does it for a specific reason. But I don't know if it's. I mean, and he has conversations with her, or he talks at her. So I'm pretty sure at some points like this is way better if it's like this blank faced, actual human face that you see instead of this scary mask. So I guess they don't rely on the scary mask for too long. I mean, he's introduced killing another person right off the bat. Right. So this is a 3.5 star, especially compared to Oculus. Sure. It's fine. There's no logical fallacies. This has a couple of motifs that Gerald's Game had, namely somebody's hand getting horribly mangled, and characters having like a visible internal monologue where a survivor is laying out options to themselves about how to get out of the situation. Yeah. And since these were essentially made back to back, it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of weird that you're into that idea, but it makes sense in the context. I mean, they don't do that in Oculus for a clear reason, right? But it makes sense in both situations why they would do that. Wow, your window is blinking red. I don't know what's up with that. Why is it doing that? Stop it. Okay. Anyways, it's a fun little story. It's not scary in the same way the Oculus isn't scary. It's just, it's tense. How's she going to get out of this? It's a good thriller. She's in a pretty big pickle. And namely because she has to keep her eyes on him mostly at all times because she can't hear him. So if he comes in the house, she's not going to know. So that's sort of part of the suspense here. There's one or two times I feel like the movie could have just ended, but you can sort of chalk that up to him toying with her or thinking like he certainly has her. And he's taking his time. I mean, he's a killer. He was relishing this a little bit. Right away, like I said, you see a picture at some point here. He's in the house with her. That's like at the beginning of the movie before she even knows he's there. And because that's him figuring out, she's deaf. It's kind of funny because there are a couple of times he's just sort of tapping the knife on his jacket, making noise, and she can't hear him. And he's like, oh, okay. So he goes back outside, and then they run and race to lock the doors and the windows and stuff. But it's still like, didn't you just, why not go break a window in the back real quick, then go do all that and make her think that, she's got you locked out, and then coming through the roof or whatever, I don't know, just then there'd be no movie. But it's one of those all right, you could have done this if you really wanted to. Right. So anyway, Hush is it's got one of those climaxes that's it's fine. The ending's kind of a little bit I don't know if that could have happened. But it's fine. But if you're gonna pick between the two, and again, like I said, this is Mike Flanagan. It's solid, but it's not Gerald's Game and it's not Oculus. Yeah, it's better than Before I Wake, though. Gotcha. I guess. I don't know. I think I gave that the same sort of rating, but Gotcha. Anyways. So would you like to talk about something that will lighten the mood, Dustin? Sure, I can. Okay. What would that be? So I went to the movies and saw Teen Titans Go to the Movies. All right. So this is a film adaptation of the TV series Teen Titans Go. Which is a readaptation of the TV series Teen Titans, which is an adaptation of the comic book series called Teen Titans. And Teen Titans Go, so for those of you who don't stay all up in the Cartoon Network world, which I can't blame you because everything looks the same these days, Teen Titans Go is a very goofy take on Teen Titans. So it's the same core cast as the original show from, 2003.
Scott Menville as Robin, Kari Payton as Cyborg, Tara Strong as Raven, Greg Sipes as Beast Boy, and Hendon Walsh as Starfire. They're still the same voice actors, but this is just a comedy version of the show. And so they throw continuity out the window. They throw like everything but the kitchen sink into this show to make you laugh. And it is very much a love it or hate it kind of show. Now, full disclosure, when this came out, I hated it. And I have never gone back to rewatch any of the series because it just looks awful. And part of that may be, rose-colored glasses looking back at the original series, which I still love and actually am going back through now. And it still holds up. But so part of that may be just that I love that version of the Titans, the 2003, a little more serious, more immature kind of version of the Teen Titans, which as I rewatch it, I realized how mature it was.
Right. That always seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's weird because it's one of those shows that got away with a lot. And I don't mean a lot of sexual innuendo or whatever, but it's very deep themes that I think today Cartoon Network would shy away from because it seems like most this may be a generalization, but I feel like most, Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or Disney Channel shows tend to be really like poppy and like disposable. It's let's just laugh for a few minutes or whatever. But it's not even escapism. It's not even good escapism. It's just like mind numbing stuff. And maybe I'm an old geezer now, so I just think that way. But maybe my parents thought the same thing about, whatever, Hey Arnold or Doug or whatever. But going back through the original series, I realized that it was very deep. It tackled actual issues of ethics and morality through these characters at a very formative stage in a lot of kids' lives. Now, I was on the older spectrum of the demographic when the show premiered, but I loved it. And it was a hit for little kids, and it was a hit for their parents because the parents loved watching it with them because, hey, it actually taught you something. It actually made you think. And here I am waxing, all romantic about the original series. But all of that is in support of the fact that I don't watch Teen Titans Go because it's a little bit of a betrayal, because it's okay, now let's take all of that, throw it out the window. There are no ethics, there's no morality, there's no philosophy. It's literally just like Beast Boy banging his head against a wall for 30 minutes. And that's what it is. And okay, deal with it. And so I've never really gotten into it, but I do love the fact that they got the original voices. Now, those original voice actors are doing a version of those characters. It's a very different thing. Kari Payton's playing Cyborg very differently. Tara Strong's playing Raven very differently. But, I love that those actors and actresses are continuing on with those characters. Now, when they announced Teen Titans Go to the movies, I was very against it because, again, I don't watch Teen Titans Go. But I was very, very happy to see that they kept those voice actors in place and they didn't say and now Jack Black plays Cyborg, and now whatever, and it would have just ruined the whole thing, like Jason Bateman as Robin, and I would have just been like, I don't care about any of this. But they kept the original cast, and I'm gonna say this: I feel weird trying to critique this film as a film because it is sort of like 3 or 4 long episodes of the TV show strung together, just from what small pieces I've seen of the show. It felt like vignettes almost rather than a one solid cohesive thing. Right. And it's weird because it's very spastic and it's very loud and noisy. So it feels weird to say and then it's a movie and dramatic things happened and character arcs and whatever, because you kind of just have to throw it all out the window and realize this is essentially eating you could have your bacon and your sausage and your eggs. You could have pancakes and you could smother them in some delicious butter and syrup and just have yourself a nice full breakfast. or you could just throw a ton of like Lucky Charms on top of like Coca-Cola and call it a breakfast, right? And that's what this is it's just sugar. And so anyway, so now that you kind of have a sense for where I'm going with this, the movie is here's the basic synopsis, right? So the film, really more than the Teen Titans, this should be called Robin Goes to the Movies, because it's Robin's movie.
Yeah, I got that impression for sure.
Yeah, and so the story is, so Robin is not invited and has to find out about it, and goes to the premiere for the newest Batman movie. This is a world that has all the same like movies, albeit, you know, like parody versions of what we have, Batman versus Superman, whatever. I think in this it's called like Yawn of Justice. And so anyway, they go to this screening, and Robin is off put because Hollywood is making movies about all the superheroes now. But why not him? Like, it's like Alfred gets a movie and the Batmobile gets a movie, but like Robin still doesn't have a movie. So he's very sad. And the other Titans are like, you know, cheer up, Robin. Like, you'll get a movie one day.
Get a life.
Right. And he says, you know what we need that all superheroes have is an arch villain. So, as luck would have it, as the story would have it, Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, they never call him that in the original series. They just called him Slade, so they just call him Slade here. Slade is robbing a bank. Now, in the original series, Slade was played by Ron Perlman to very chilling results, and here he's played by Will Arnett, which is weird considering he's also Batman in the Lego Batman, but okay.
Right.
So Slade is robbing whatever, getting a diamond or whatever. I don't know what it is. And so Robin's like, you could be my villain, and you know, whatever. And so the whole movie, the thing is, we have to make ourselves seem like we're real heroes so that we will get a movie.
Right.
That's the whole premise of the movie. Now, like I said, it's in vignettes. There's a whole center section which gets surprisingly dark for what this is, but like in a weird way, like where I'm questioning, did they know that this was that dark, or did they just not care? Like, what's going on? Anyway, so again, this whole review is spastic because this movie is spastic, but bottom line, the plot is very simple and really stretched too thin for a 90-minute movie. And I think this is like barely 90 minutes. It's an hour 24. So they're stretching this story already. Like, that whole center section has nothing to do with anything. It's like almost like the whole second act is just removed. It's just something different. And so, it's a weird movie. It's really strange. I'm going to give it 3 stars because it's fine, because like, I guess your kids will like it. And it's not that it's a bad movie, because it's actually kind of funny. And even though there's plenty of like fart and poop jokes, which can be funny, but they can also be really just weird. And so anyway, the movie's weird. The movie's strange. It's got, cameos by all sorts of different heroes and different villains, and Nicolas Cage plays Superman. Like, the whole thing is
what?
Yeah, Nicolas Cage is the voice of Superman in this. So
finally.
He finally gets his chance, which is cool. Like, Michael Bolton is in this. Kristen Bell is in this. Like, it's so weird and all over the place. But like I said, the plot's okay. It's just better suited for a smaller film. Like, you need some subplots in here in order to pad out the running time, but they didn't give it a subplot. It's like one story stretched so razor thin. But like I said, like, the redeeming fact is you'll smile and you'll laugh. but you'll forget it a couple weeks later, like maybe a couple days later.
Mm,
It's not like the Lego Batman movie, which
right.
also is funny, but at the same time has some heart, has like the character go through an actual story, like character arc. Like I'm going to be better now at the end than I was at the
Right.
beginning. Um, and it feels like an actual movie, and there's jokes in there, but it feels like an actual movie. This feels like a joke that became a movie. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's the difference. This has no like dramatic center. So in that way, that's what I mean. It's just like Lucky Charms with Coke poured in. It's just like, yeah, these things all taste good, but do they all taste good together? And there's nothing really to keep me satisfied at all. And like I'm gonna be hungry again in 5 minutes, and whatever. And like I'll be sick to my stomach in a few, like whatever. But the problem is, um, the biggest problem is that it's forgettable. The
Hmm.
biggest problem is that all of this stuff, it's funny, whatever, you'll have a good time when you're there, but then you just walk out and forget it. So it's not rewatchable, I didn't feel. And I know it's got a 91 on Rotten Tomatoes, so I know a lot of people love it. A lot of people really love this movie, and it's strange because nobody likes the show. But yeah, I'm just gonna have to call it a 3 star and be done with it because it didn't piss me off like I thought it would, but it certainly didn't. It didn't do anything that was like really all that good either. And you'll hear people say, "Oh, but it like references itself, and it's so like fourth wall breaky, and like it's so meta, and you're gonna there's got jokes about Batman versus Superman, and like the whole Martha joke is in there, and like whatever." And it's like, yeah, but I don't know, like we've heard those jokes before. And
Yeah.
like it's not really that funny. Just because DC's joking about themselves doesn't automatically make it smart.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like they think that they're like, okay, well, the first thing we gotta do is we gotta catch up to these the tone of Marvel. So let's be jokey. And do you know what tests well is self-deprecating humor. And let's just go on some message boards,
Slap it
take
in
some
there.
notes, and we'll just call out every joke that people are already criticizing our movies for. But it's like
Exactly.
that's not the point. Is to not be so obvious. That's the
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. Now, granted, this is not part of the DCEU. It's not like whatever.
Yeah,
This is like a TV show that got a movie. It's a completely different thing. But I don't say like, oh, how brave of them to like make fun of Warner Brothers. It's like, no, that's easy fodder. Everybody's making fun
sure.
of Warner Brothers. So whatever. Yeah, there's a couple of good there's funny moments. Like I don't want to undersell that. Like it's funny. But at the end of the day, you don't get anything dramatic. You don't get anything like that is actually like what I would consider a nutrient. You don't get any nutrition from this whatsoever.
Interesting.
Um, so in that way, what I would say is this is the equivalent of watching 90 minutes of Teen Titans Go on TV. However, it has better animation. It's
Hmm.
probably funnier because everybody's bringing their A game, and it's more like meta than they can be on the show, I guess. Um, so yeah, like it, it, it's so weird. I feel weird about even giving it 3 stars because again, it's just so weird to even call this a movie.
Yeah.
Um, and but go here's what I would say. Like if you're at all interested, see it because it's not necessarily a waste of your time. Because at the end of the day, even if you hated it, you saw something that you can learn from. And I think there's plenty to learn from here. And here's what I want to say. This is a little bit spoilers, so maybe skip forward like 2 minutes or whatever if you don't want to hear this. But the best thing that this movie did is it left us on a high note, which is they did the whole Marvel mid-credits scene thing that Marvel always does. And what they did was they basically announced a revival of the original series. in the mid credits of this film. That's the best thing they could have done, because at that point I was like, well, okay, I've almost pretty much already forgotten this movie. And then boom, like, give me something that I like. Cool. And you've probably been spoiled by it already if you follow this movie at all. But the point is, that's the best thing they could have done. That's the best news I could have gotten. And, it just served essentially. The purpose of this film was to remind you how great the original series was, and to remind you of how great TV and movies like this used to be.
Right.
And at the same time, make you laugh. And so that's not an unenjoyable experience. It just doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah.
So that's the weird thing about this movie is it's not unenjoyable, but you get nothing out of it either.
Right.
So yeah, Teen Titans Go to the Movies, 3 stars. Don't see it in theaters. I just steer clear. Like, when it's $1 or whatever at Redbox, pick it up. It's fine. If you're at all interested. And if you have kids, I would honestly say this is probably better for, I don't know, like older, like maybe like 8 to 10 years old, because it's so spastic and like crazy that I just can't imagine like a 5-year-old not emulating that. And I don't know that you want your 5-year-old to emulate like completely bouncing off the walls all the time.
No, like, that's one of the reasons.
Constantly.
Yeah, I told you how I was starting to have my kids watch more live action films. Yeah, and that's part of why, is because people act normal relatively in those. If you show them a bunch of these, especially, I'm not kidding. If we're on Netflix and it's ever like, oh, here's a animated film, if it's like a DreamWorks film, I almost always say nope.
No, never mind.
Because I don't first of all, like, just historically not great movies, but as a parent, I don't want my kid imitating just these spastic gumball characters. I want them, you give them a Pixar one. A few crazy things happen, but there's some emotional intelligence in there.
Right. Exactly.
Or how about pick up this book.
Right, exactly. Because that's the thing, right? Like, we've said this before.
Yes.
That kids are smarter than people give them credit for, and they can understand a Pixar movie way better than people assume they can.
Well, almost better than adults, because their brains are primed for learning. So
exactly,
actually, they're going to be more receptive to the message.
Correct.
Which is almost why more mature kids films like Inside Out actually really matter that kids see them, because they can actually learn a lesson really early in life that'll really help them get through tough times.
Yeah, 100%. And you could say like, oh, but this movie is about like, accepting yourself. Like, Robin accepts that he is the way that he is. He's a goofy kid. And it's like, yeah, but A, not really, and B, is that really what we want to accept? Like, that you're a goofy kid and that's okay to be all the time, and whatever. And but then again, this movie basically paints adulthood as just a series of people who are like inept and stupid anyway. So I don't know. The whole thing just is really weird. But yeah, like I said, it's not unenjoyable. It's just gonna cause you either to have a headache, or like that's like best case scenario, you just get a headache. Mm-hmm. And then the worst case scenario is like you get a headache and you also forget it 5 minutes later, because what did it mean? Like, it didn't mean anything. I can do that. Like, you guys are watching me right now. Like I could literally stand up and just yell and bounce off the walls, and tomorrow morning you're still going to go to work and you're not going to think about that at all. You know what I mean? Like, but if somebody sits here and like challenges you about like philosophy, then like you carry it with you. And like, that's the thing. And I think it just hurts that much more because the original series bothered to do that. Like,
that's it.
Like the best example I can give you, and I'll close with this. The best example of this is my favorite episode of the original series. Was an episode called Haunted, and I believe it was in the third season. And this was always my favorite as a kid, and then I just rewatched it a week ago, and it's still the best episode, I think. And what it is Robin has spent so much time and energy devoted to Slade and devoted to bringing him down. And wallowing in the mistakes he made that allowed Slade to be a problem. That when Slade is finally gone, Robin still sees him. And he has, in essence, this was manufactured by Slade, but he has basically a panic attack and this anxiety-ridden fever dream that Slade is still alive, to the point where he begins to hurt himself, endanger himself, because he's haunted by the memory of, it's basically PTSD. That's right. What it is. It's PTSD. And Robin is dealing with this in a very visceral way. And it never comes out and says, like, you've got to push forward. You got to move, put the past behind you. You got to do this. What it does is it says literally, Robin realizes that if the lights are on, then Slade goes away. And so the episode ends with Robin turning the lights to the basement that he's in on, and Slade disappears. And even though he's bloodied and bruised by himself, he realizes that as long as he can keep the light on, that Slade can't get to him. But if that light flickers, Slade might come back. And so what the episode ends with is this PTSD may be there forever. Robin may forever see Slade. And even though it was like, they sell it as like it was a powder that Slade had left, for Robin to inhale, and now it's sort of like fear toxin or whatever. Yeah. The metaphor is still ripe that Robin may have post-traumatic stress disorder from his time with Slade forever. And it's going to be a daily battle to keep the lights on. Like, that's how deep that show got. And then to see it turned into this, while I can see how some people would like it, I can't get behind it the way I can get behind that, because that taught a 10-year-old something about, hey, you went through something traumatic, but just keep the light on. And that means infinitely more in the real world than laughing for 90 minutes. So anyway.
Wow.
That's it.
All right. So underwhelming for sure, because that's certainly some deep things they explore on the show, and that it sounds like none of that's present in the film. So
Right.
I know we're sort of up against it, so can I compress this last review?
Sure.
Since I don't have too terribly much to say about it. I want to quickly recommend people with Netflix, in case you're not into horror, although I really recommend Oculus for a mature story, but hey, shit happens. We don't always see good films. I'd want to recommend the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
Longest title.
It's a book that it's based on a book. It's set in 1946, very freshly post-war. Technically England. Guernsey is an island that's sort of under the British Crown, but sort of independently ruled as well. Like they get like military assistance from them, but they're considered sovereign, I believe. But it's a bunch of Brits on an island, effectively. It's really close to France, but it's British. It's in the British Isles. And so that's important because like a lot of the characters in this film were, the kids were evacuated, and there's family separation stuff that's going on still in this film, even though the war's been over for a couple of years. Anyway, this film is about an author played by Lily James, who learns of this book club basically on Guernsey that they started during the German occupation, and the name that it was called was sort of one of those blurted out, like, what's the name of your group? The Guernsey Literary, and it just becomes a thing. because they got caught by the Nazis one time illegally organizing, and they had to think of an official name to call the group. And then because the Nazis made them register the group, they then had to keep meeting, and so they would just read, and so they talk about books and stuff. So anyways, one of the guys writes to her about it because one of her books popped up or something. And so she is enchanted by it and decides, I want to go and I want to see this for myself. So she sort of like leaves London for a few days, leaves her American fiance, and goes to Guernsey to join this book club. And sort of in the course of it, pursues this mystery related to one of their members who isn't present at the meetings anymore. And it's this whole unfolding plot of like, well, where is she? And then there's this continuing unfolding story that it's, I don't want to say it's a mystery, but I'll dock it points a little bit there just because it sort of like seems like it's going to be about, maybe it's a good thing. It seems like it's going to be more about her finding inspiration to write a new novel or something. And it sort of becomes this big, like, essentially her being a reporter and interviewing people and looking up old documents and stuff and whatever. But it's actually, it does inspire her, I guess. But it's directed by Mike Newell, who most people might recognize as the director of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, among other things. But Mike Newell's a really a good director, suited to this material. This is a pleasant surprise. This was recommended by my wife. So I just sort of watched it because I just watch stuff that she recommends, and this was a pleasant surprise. This is a 4-star film. I liked the characters a lot in here. They really give them each equal weight and balance and depth. Certainly more than when you first meet them, because they all just seem sort of silly and stock to begin with, and then they peel the layers back like you're supposed to do and show you that there's more to these human beings. The cinematography was really good. The story was good. Direction was really well done. Period pieces filmed on location always look nice. By the way, this is a Netflix film. This isn't like just on their catalog. This is them. This is produced by them. This is from this year. And Lily James, of course, is always charming. The cast, it's just a sweet little film, I think. There's a couple of cliches in here, that are kind of like, sort of like, the fiance being like the wrong choice and the meet cute and the I love you at the end. But it does work in context for this film. It would have bothered me a lot more in a modern setting, where social norms are clearly different and a little more cynical. But it's fine. So it's nice and safe in that sense. But the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. It's on Netflix. 4 stars. I didn't find much wrong with it. It was just an engaging enough story to keep me interested. But a sweet enough story to where it's not a complex ending at all.
Cool.
One or two things maybe like not unresolved, but like there's one or two story elements that don't go a positive direction. And so if it had done that, I would have docked it more points because there would have felt like there was nothing at stake or nothing emotionally for the characters to go through. But they do. They have them go through some stuff and they handle one or two other elements in pretty mature ways that are usually glossed over or too saccharine. So nice little film. So check that out on Netflix if you don't want to watch horror. And if you don't want to watch Teen Titans, go over to Netflix, watch this. It's like I told Dustin, Dustin, you watch Oculus, but you and your wife, you can watch this. Unless your wife's an avid horror fan.
Right. She's not.
She's not.
But we did watch the trailer for this and she thought it looked good. So yeah.
Guernsey?
Yep.
Yeah. This is a sweet little film, I think.
Cool.
So I think you'll be satisfied with that film.
Awesome.
For sure. That's going to do it. Let's cap that one off. So cool. Guys, we'll see y'all next week. Is there anything else we want to announce or talk about or tease? Nothing really.
Cool. Nothing really. Yeah,
everything's all good in the hood.
Yeah,
all right,
good.
guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Yep. See y'all next week. See you on Monday for the quick pick. Happy trails. Get out there, see some good movies. Yep. And
Sweet.
Bye.
Bye.